yesterday I was listening to the author of the book Flow Research, and fascinating because, you know, for those of you who have done our mastery class, you guys have already adopted a doing gratitudes every day. And what the author talked about, but what happened with this author is he got a job following pro athletes. Like, he was really fascinated in the 90s. He was really fascinated by these elite skiers, rock climbers, people who do these just incredible elite sports. And he wanted to discover what is it about these athletes? What is it about their performance that has them quickly elevate to the peak, right? One of the things that he highlighted is for years and years and years, researchers said it's physically impossible for a surfer to surf a wave that's greater than 25 feet, right? And then in the 90s, all of a sudden, there's all these pro athletes that are breaking records, extreme records, right? There's surfing 62-foot waves, right? So just shattered all of these records. And so this particular guy, the author of Flow Research, talked about what is it that gets people into that mindset. And so he studied him for 10 years, and then something happened to him. He got Lyme disease, and it was debilitating. It was excruciatingly painful, couldn't move. He went into a depression. 85% of his body couldn't move. And he was like that for several months, and then some buddies of his said, hey, look, we're going out. He loved to surf. It's we're going out surfing. I can't surf. They said, hey, we're going surfing. And they did. They took him surfing, and when they put him out in the water, and within 20 seconds, he caught a wave. And he was ecstatic. The muscle memory kicked in, and he was actually able to surf, albeit, on hands and knees. And he just loved it. He caught 3 or 4 more waves, and then they took him back to his house, and literally he was out, never got out of bed for 3 weeks. His muscle, it just exacerbated his muscles and all of that. But as soon as he was able to, he got back and he went surfing again. And he continued to do that. And he'd been in therapy for months and months and months, not making much progress. But then all of a sudden, he reclaimed 90% usage of his body within about 4 months. And so doctors, physical therapists, they were flabbergasted. How did this happen? And that's what really started his process of flow research. What he realized is that during the time that he was taking the wave, he was absolutely, totally focused on what he was doing, and it eliminated the idea of flow is when that you're so into the moment that literally time stands still. You lose any other conscious thought other than what you're focused on in the moment, right? So I'm going to bring this back around to those of you who are focused on gratitude. I was so fascinated by what this author was talking about, because the reason that he was able to heal his body, to heal himself, this is what doctors and physical therapists figured out. When he was in that flow state of mind, it gave his body the opportunity to really go to work and focus on healing itself. And so the correlation that the author made about how important it is to do gratitudes, he says, look, the brain processes 11 million bits of information, 11 million bits of information per second. That's what's happening all around us, 11 million bits of information a second. But our consciousness, we can only see and interpret about 2,000. 2,000 versus 11 million, okay? So how does our brain know what to focus on? How does it know, right? Well, it has to do with the amygdala portion of your brain, which sees information and decides which one to focus on and which one to let by. And so I've used the illustration before that Cambria's father is a firefighter. He's a battalion chief. And if right now, as we're speaking, if he were in the room and a mile away a fire truck went by, most of us might not even hear it, but he would pick up on it. Why? Because his amygdala is tuned into that sound's happening and he actually processes it versus maybe we don't. Does that make sense? Or if you buy a car, right? My daughter bought a Nissan Sentra and then all of a sudden she's seeing Nissan Sentras anywhere. That's the amygdala going to work. So here's how important gratitude is. Our brain, because it's evolved over 2 million years, our brain still processes, it's on the lookout for what's dangerous, what there is to be afraid of, what there is to might negatively impact us. That's what it looks for. As a matter of fact, the average human being processes 9 bits of negative information for every 1 bit of positive information. So what was fascinating to me about listening to this author, and I'm happy to share it with anyone that's interested, what's fascinating to me about this author is he really, like, I've always known that it's important to focus on, especially early in the morning, focus on 3 or 4 things. The author does 10 things, 3 or 4 things that you can be grateful for and really allow yourself to be in that moment. It gives you the opportunity to be in that flow state, if you will. But what the author talked about is by conditioning yourself to focus on 3 to 10 things that you can be grateful for, in that frame of mind, think about what your outcomes, like what you want to accomplish in life. When you're in that state of mind, you're actually quieting that voice, by the way, which has such an impact on us, quieting up that voice that's constantly looking for negative, that's constantly looking for what's wrong. And so over time, you can actually condition yourself to focus on more about life that you're grateful for, and your brain is freed up to go to work on finding solutions, finding strategies, finding opportunities that are consistent with what you want to accomplish in life. Versus if you're not actually conditioning your mind, then it's operating at default. It's fear, 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 because that's what the news media is pushing at us. And one of the things that the author talked about is that it's what causes people to be afraid of change. Change is really confronting and triggering for people. And he says, look, the danger of that for people who don't daily condition themselves to really focus on what they can be grateful for and actually be in that mental and emotional state, for people who don't do that, it's not that you're going to operate at default. It's way more likely that you're going to progress towards things like illness, depression. You're setting yourself up to go into those categories of dealing with illness and depression and frustration and like that. For people who are not actually taking the time to meditate, to condition themselves, to condition their thinking, to condition their emotions, you're going to fall further and further and further and further behind. And the author actually talked about why do successful people continue to succeed even in spite of market dips and tumult and changing conditions? Like, why does a certain segment of people just continue to grow and others continue to fall behind? He said the thing that you'll find in common with most, not all, but most people who succeed at a high level is that they've embraced the idea of actually conditioning their mindset and not just allowing themselves to operate at default.